Guys, today on the ThriveMore podcast, I interview Dion von Moltke. He is a professional race car driver. He's raced at the highest levels, but he's teaching business that he's scaling, and I mean scaling worldwide. You are going to love this guy's passion. I could not get enough of Dion. He bleeds love for what he does. And it's just great when you talk to an entrepreneur who's a founder, who's in the trenches and building his business from the ground up and applying the principles from what made him, a top level athlete to a top level business person. And he does it with humility. I know you're going to love this. And he drops some great leadership nuggets. And at the very end, he just gives, I think, one of the best pieces of advice for anybody considering opening their own business, starting their own business, buying a franchise, whatever it may be. He just sums it up in one sentence. I think you're going to love it. On today's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Dion von Moltke. In addition to having a super cool name, Dion is a professional race car driver and the co-founder of Blayze Coaching. Blayze Coaching provides coaching sessions, custom training, and mentorship from the top coaches and former athletes across multiple different sports with the person trying to learn that skill. Dion is the 2013 winner of the Rolex at Daytona 24 and also a two-time winner of the Sebring 12-hour. So as a coach, he focuses on the why behind the what, and he strives for simplification with that. So let's get started. Dion, welcome to the ThriveMore podcast.
Thanks for having me on, man. I'm super excited about this. Love what you guys are talking about. Love what you're doing. And I think we'll have a lot of fun today.
Cool. Mixed two of us. So Dion, I watched your TED Talk, and I know a little bit about your story, and we talked a little bit before we had the cameras roll here. But for the listeners' benefit, can you share a little bit about your background and how did you get involved in racing? Like everyone wants to know, like what gets a guy behind or a gal behind a steering wheel in a race car?
So it all started from a bribe from my dad, funny enough, when I was 13 years old. Earlier in my life, we had moved around a lot. And we lived in Dallas, Sydney to LA, LA to Miami. And, this is all pre-Facebook, this is dial-up internet days type of stuff. So every time you moved, you switch schools, you have to, lose all your friends, make all your new friends, all that type of stuff. So we had just moved to Miami. I was going to middle school at the time. And this middle school was like one that had, rather than textbooks and stuff like that, it was all laptop based. So as a 13-year-old boy, what the last thing I was doing in class was studying or listening to the teacher. At the time, we were all, you look at the screens and like five of us are playing Counter-Strike together and trying to like hide from the teacher. So needless to say, I was not doing very well. So my dad wanted me to switch schools again, which I very much did not want to do. So he kind of sat me down and says, look, I know you don't want to do this, so I'm going to bribe you to do this. I'll either get you a nice gaming computer or a go-kart to switch schools. And I was like, man, give me a go-kart. Let's do this thing. I'm in. It was never like we had, of course I was a fan of Formula One, grew up watching Michael Schumacher. My dad, grew up in South Africa. He went to Kyalami and watched races. So like we were fans, but we didn't know anything about the sport. It was never meant to be anything more than something we did for fun on the weekends. But, I think like a month later, I was racing my first race. A few months later, I was competing for state championships. The next year, I was national championships. Within a couple of years, I was competing for world championships. So it spun out of control real fast.
Wow. Yeah. Now, and this is, for those of us that don't know a ton about racing, like it starts like in literally a go-kart, a much faster, more capable
100
go-kart.
100-mile-an-hour go-kart.
Oh my gosh. Right. And then how does that, so you win at that series or that level and then it moves up? Kind of talk about that.
Yeah. So, at a 30,000 foot view, it's not too dissimilar from, basketball or football or anything like that, where there's a ladder system. The unique thing is most people start in go-karts. And you sort of at some point, usually anywhere from, it's a little bit earlier now, when I was racing, it was anywhere from about 15 to 17 years old, you transition to race cars, which is a big jump. In a go-kart, it's 100-mile-an-hour top speed. Your butt's, 2 inches off the floor, 1 inch off the floor. There's no suspension. It's raw. You go into a race car, and now you've got suspension, and most go-karts will have gearing. You have gearing. You're going to the big racetracks. And you transition to sort of the bottom layer of the ladder series. Now, I think the difference is when you go to transition to race cars, you're looking at a professional racing career, then in some sports have this, you sort of have different pathways. You have the, hey, I want to go to Formula One, I want to go to IndyCar, I want to go to NASCAR, I want to go to sports cars. And so, in the best analogy I can have is it's almost like you have, the NBA, which would be like the equivalent to Formula One. You have the European Pro Basketball League, which might be the equivalent of like an IndyCar or sports car career. So everybody dreams of going to Formula One, but I realized early on that wasn't really in the cards for us. There's a financial part of all of this, right? Yeah. And we couldn't afford to make the next step in the open wheel ladder. So when I went from karting to race cars, I was at the first step competing with Joseph Newgarden, who's a 2-time IndyCar champion, just won the Indy 500 this year, drives for Penske, and Ricky and Jordan Taylor, and a bunch of people we kind of all came up together. Connor Daly was in there. But after the first year of that ladder system, I remember we were at a track called Utah Motorsports Campus, and this other series was there, which was sports cars, which was the 24 Hours of Daytona, 24 Hours in Le Mans, stuff like that. Yeah. And we were watching the stands, and my dad had the foresight to realize, hey, sure, I know that you want to get the IndyCar Formula One, but there's more drivers getting paid to race professionally in sports cars. And we can maybe make this next step happen. So at that point, we sort of transitioned to sports cars. I went and joined the bottom layer or bottom rung of this at the time called Grand Am and American Le Mans Series, and then worked my way up that ladder system to start racing professionally and getting paid to race there as well. So it's a ladder system, and you kind of have to figure out like where you want to specialize, what you can kind of make happen. It's a weird sport. It's a terrible sport to try and make a living in. The business side of racing sucks, but I mean, you're getting paid to race cars, so it's hard to complain too much.
Yeah. I have, of course, I'm a fan like so many people of the F1 show and all that, but my wife at the time, this is going back 2003, I was living in Dallas, and Texas Motor Speedway had, of course, a course inside it, right? And, bought me a racing experience where I was able to drive the race car and go around. And I had to follow, I'm in this full-fledged race car, and you would know, I can't recall the exact makeup of it, but I had to follow this guy in a little Audi A4 who was a professional driver. And I thought, this guy's going to get in my way.
Yeah, 100%.
I could not believe how hard it was, one, to drive that car, to keep it, on the track in line. And just the foresight that those drivers have to, you're looking 3 turns ahead as a driver. I'm focused on the straightaway in front of me, and they're already, 3 turns ahead thinking through it. So talk just a little bit, because it was really humbling for me, because I thought I was a pretty good driver. Kind of talk just to the science behind, and I know there's an art and a science, but kind of the science behind driving, because it's fascinating.
Yeah. So, I think one of the most unfortunate things, talking from the pro side that wants to see more fans get involved in racing and understand it, one of the most unfortunate things that's happened to the sport is that everyone drives a car. And I think that gives an incredibly wrong perception into what goes into racing a car. The best analogy I can give is it's like, sure, I walk. I'm not going to go run 100 meters like Usain Bolt.
Sure.
And it's probably a very similar kind of concept for this. The difference between walking and running at that speed, the difference between driving your car and racing is so violently different. So first, let me put you into the environment of a race car. It is an incredibly violent environment to be in. So number one, it's hot. I'm not making this up. We were racing at Homestead Motor Speedway. This was probably 2011, 2012. It was a BMW M4. Of course, it's not actually an M4. It's a full-on race car that's made to look like one. They got a raw chicken breast. They put it in tin foil, and they put it in the car. They happened to win the race, and when they celebrated, they took the chicken breast out, and they took a bite out of it, and that thing was fully cooked through. Right?
That's
so
crazy.
Just to give you an idea, it's about 140, 150 degrees inside of a race car, on a warmer day. So number one, it's hot.
Yeah.
Number two is you're pulling 2 to 3 Gs at the very low end. It's more like 4 to 5 Gs for a long period of time. So the races that I did were 24 hours long, 12 hours long, 6 hours long. And it's like a relay race of sorts. So obviously I wasn't driving for 24 hours. I had 2 or 3 teammates with me, but we would do 3-hour stints at a time. You would go and sleep or you would try to sleep for 3 hours, and you would get back in the car. It could be 2 a.m. when you're driving around and you're, flat out pushing, right? So it's violent. It's high Gs. Those Gs means your head, your shoulders, all that weighs 3 to 4 times what it normally weighs, right? So it's hot. The steering wheel, a lot of cars don't have power steering. So those steering wheels are extremely heavy. If you don't have power steering, it's like a 20-pound weight in each hand.
Wow.
Just trying to put that in front of you, right? And that, like, your core is engaged. When you're braking at threshold braking, I mean, you're attacking the brakes hard. And every corner is a hard braking corner. You are putting about 1,400 to 1,500 pounds of pressure on the brake pedal. So when we're standing on the brakes, it's high pressure on the brakes, and you have to be able to hit the brakes that hard, but have the dexterity in your foot to manipulate the brake pedal correctly. And you asked sort of the science behind driving a race car. The science is, it really comes down to what we call weight transfer. So when you're driving in the streets, and you can kind of experience this a little bit at a very minor level, when you brake, your body and the weight of the car goes forward. If you set it outside the car, we have like if the car is on a pivot, you'll see the front end of the car kind of slam down, right? When you accelerate, it does the opposite thing. The weight moves back, and you'll see the front end lift. One of the phrases that we use is, where the weight goes is where the grip goes. So everything that we're doing as a race car driver is manipulating where the weight of the car is to generate maximum grip. So when I'm turning into a corner, I'm trying to generate front grip to get the car to turn into the corner. And it could be the difference between a few pounds of pressure could transition too much weight to the front end, which could help me lose rear grip, which is where you can spin. You can also overload the front tires. So it comes down to, you've got to have the finite control to send just the right amount of weight to the front or to the rear, to the middle of the car. And some corners you're braking, like your big toe is just resting on the brake pedal. In other corners, you're slamming on the brakes. You have to have a really clear understanding of where you want to pick up the throttle, where you want to get back to full throttle, and really be able to control the car at the limit. And kind of what makes this all really, really difficult is, we're talking about hundredths of a second. Like these split second little mistakes can make you lose time. And it all matters. Like when we won the Daytona 24-hour, right? 24 hours of racing, hundreds of laps. We won the race by 1.4 seconds, right? You're talking about like 30 pit stops throughout the race. You're talking about thousands of brake zones. You're talking about, tens of thousands of gear shifts throughout the race.
That is
right?
unreal.
So the margin here of error is so small in the midst of this, extremely hot environment, on lack of sleep, on, at the limit. It's hard to explain how different the environment of a race car is, but there's really no synergies, nothing that kind of translates from driving on the streets to driving on the racetrack. It's completely different discipline.
Well, I mean, like, as I shared with you, when I did it, it was humbling. I mean, I literally I left there with my tail between my legs, got back in my Audi thinking I was cool when I got there, like realizing I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So I can tell you what, the first couple times I started to lose the back end of that car, and it scared the hell out of me, going 60, 70 miles an hour and coming. What you've done this at, at the elite level. What's one of the scariest times you've had inside a car on the track?
Too many to number. I would say one of the scariest ones, and it's hard to explain how, like, holy shit moment this was to people that aren't in racing. We were racing at Petit Le Mans. I was driving for a team called Flying Lizard Motorsports, and Petit's one of my favorite races. At Road Atlanta, it's a 10-hour race. You're ending at the night, and I was the finishing driver, and it was, it's pitch dark. And Road Atlanta is one of the craziest tracks in North America. So the form of racing I did was not oval racing. Sure, we talk about 24 hours in Daytona, but we don't just drive the banking. There's an infield that we drive. So Road Atlanta, purpose-built racetrack. Think about like a Formula One racetrack. And so there's 12 corners. The average speed around here is the highest of any track around North America. I want to say our average speeds were like 130, 140 miles an hour, something like that. And there's one corner called turn 12. So you come up over a blind crest into 11, and then you drop down the hill. It's like a 5 or 6 story drop. You turn in fifth gear, and it's completely flat out in fifth gear, meaning you're turning into the corner in our cars probably 130 miles an hour, flat out, and it's pitch dark, right? So all you have is your headlight.
On top of that, it's pitch dark, yeah.
And so what happened, this is probably like 30 minutes to go in the race, 45 minutes to go in the race. And by the way, this is the last race of the year for the championship. So everyone's very much on it. And a car had crashed like a turn 3 or turn 4, which is like halfway around the lap. And the way that this happens, so a full course yellow comes out. If you're a race fan, you probably have seen this, where the leader comes to a slow, but the rest of the pack is pushing or driving flat out to catch up, and then you go slow. So I'm in a pack of about 5 or 6 cars. We come over the top of this crest, and we turn in. Again, the crash is halfway around the track, and I pick my head up, and sitting diagonally across the racetrack right at the apex is a massive tow truck, and it's just parked. And there is, on the inside, like you can hit the curb and there's grass. That's not a great option. On the outside, there is a car width of grass and a massive concrete wall at Road Atlanta. So I don't even know what happened, but we see this thing parked. And by the way, if you hit this thing, like you're not to be gruesome, but you're done. You're dead. This was a big screw up by the track.
Yeah.
I don't know how, but none of us hit it. I went to the outside, and when you go offline in a race car, you pick up what we call marbles. So there's like one fast line, and if you go off the fast line, this is that 10-hour racing, the tires shred stuff, marbles, stuff like that, and you lose a massive amount of grip. So where I can go through that 130 miles an hour online, if I'm offline at 90 miles an hour, way off the limit, I'm losing the car, and you're just hanging on for dear life. I go out wide, 2 or 3 cars go out wide, and 3 cars go down the middle and like split this thing, and no one hits anything. No one hits it. I don't know what the hell happened or how we did that. It was pure luck more than anything else. That was probably one moment where it was like, the only other one I could kind of talk about was racing at New Jersey Motorsports Park, and it was raining so hard, I literally couldn't see out the front of the car. They gave me a stick with like a shirt squeegee thing that I would kind of defog the front mirror. So you're driving down the straightaway, shifting gears, defogging to see out. And I was kind of asking the team for help. And what they ended up saying is, look out the side of the car, look for banners to try to judge your braking marker, because you could not see with the spray off from the cars where you were, where the corner was, or anything like that. So too many to talk about.
That's great. Wow. Yeah. I think that point, maybe they don't postpone races like that though, do they? Is it just, it's always the weather is...
I mean, look, if there's lightning or something like that, they will. Every once in a while, it rains to the point where it's like a little, like there's so much puddling that you'll get aquaplaning where the car lifts off the ground and you're not in control anymore. So it's very rare. Like it has to be a ton of rain. Like we'll race in pretty much any conditions.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, this is, and listeners, if you're curious, like, what does this have to do with entrepreneurship or business or health or wealth? A lot. And you could tell that Dion was so descriptive in the way he was describing the grip and where the weight goes, the grip goes, because he is a coach. He's one of the top coaches in motorsports. So, Dion, can you kind of talk about your transition from being behind the wheel and a race car driver to coaching? And then I think, of course, we have to then get into how this took you into a business model.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the pinnacle of what I was trying to reach for was driving for a manufacturer. And at the time, the top manufacturer to drive for was Audi. A long story short.
And explain why that's important. Right.
So, in sports cars, in the sport of racing, there's little to no job security. Almost always you're on a year-by-year contract. And it's very easy to just, because the financial model of how pro racing works, it's very easy to be completely left out and kind of on the side. So I was driving for Audi, and in a long story short, I was trying to drive for Audi, and I kind of found the situation where I was teammates with a factory driver. What you call a factory driver is the person that drives for the team. And, some races he was faster than me, some races I was faster than him. We were pretty even. I went to Audi Sport, Audi Germany, and said, hey, like, I would love to drive for you. And they kind of gave me well, you're an American, drive in America, you need Audi of America to hire you. So I went to Audi of America, and they're like, well, we don't hire race car drivers. So you got to cut this like political situation, like what the heck do you do? So Audi hired me in a marketing brand ambassador role, because that's all they could do, but then put me in their race cars as well. As part of that role, I went to track day events all across America, Audi Club events. So what most people don't realize is there's 30 to 50,000 people in the United States that are amateur race car drivers. So you can take your street car on the track. There's probably hundreds of racetracks throughout the United States. Have an instructor sit right seat with you and no speed limits, go drive, right? And then you can go all the way up to amateur wheel-to-wheel racing, the SCCA or NASA and all of that type of stuff. So it's a big industry. And so I went out to these events, and what I found was what I would teach was the exact opposite of what your like local guru or YouTube guru would be coaching, right? So I took a step back and said, well, why are people not learning from quality coaches? Like, why are people learning from those that really shouldn't be coaching? And it comes down to a mix of accessibility. Who are the right coaches? Am I ready to learn with them? That's quite a big deal, right? Affordability. Good coaches are really expensive. Availability. Good coaches are often just non-available. And then convenience, right? Like it's if you don't live in your area, then it's not very convenient. At the same time, I saw so many of my peers that I knew were fantastic coaches choosing not to coach because the business model sucks, right? How do you scale a coaching business? The only way to really do it is to charge more on an hourly or daily rate. Every time you charge more on that rate, you outprice yourself to more and more of the market, right? So like you can only make so much money for the most part, right? There's always exceptions to the rule.
Sure.
So where I became really interested here was, and where I became passionate was solving this problem, right? How do I know great coaches make a massive impact in someone's life. And it doesn't matter if you're like me one day of dreaming of becoming pro, or if you're like a lot of our customers, that is a 55-year-old doctor that's doing this for fun, but really wants to get good, right? Like I am a crappy tennis player, but I really want to get good. I care about it. And I want to learn from really high quality people because those are the ones that can make a massive impact, right? But the search and all of this type of finding them, working with them, all of that's it's a terrible challenge, right? It's not easy to do. So that's where I became really passionate. I was like, how do you do this in an online format that's personalized? And that's sort of the key distinction here is when you look at online learning, most of it is crap, right? Most of it is, let me go watch this YouTube video. Most of it is, let me go watch this masterclass, which don't get me wrong, I've done. It's entertaining. Sure, I've watched the Serena Williams masterclass, but I know that I need to do these 7 things on my ball toss right. I need to have the right toss, the right height, the right pronation, the right racket head speed, which one of those 7 things am I doing wrong, right? We're all very bad at figuring out which one of those 7 things we're doing wrong and how do we fix it. So where we came in was, okay, let's personalize into the individual, right? Let's have them film themselves, send that video across. And there's a few platforms that are doing this online. We then want to layer deeper. And we said, great, we can't just stop at a video analysis. Because when you think about a learner-coach relationship at any level with any goal, it's a relationship. It's consistency. We need to be able to be vulnerable with each other. I need to be able to ask questions. I need to be able to kind of really build that relationship. And that's really, I think, what separated us and where we've really focused is video analysis and personalization at its core, bringing in great coaches, but helping those great coaches have relationships with people and build relationships with people that grow over time, and supplying tools for those coaches to scale those relationships, to manage their customers so they can just focus on the coaching sessions. And we've been able to do this in a way that drops the upfront costs of working with someone like me or other peers by like 90 to 95%, but help me scale from working with, let's say, 3 to 5 people to hundreds of people, maybe even thousands of people once we're done, and making a bigger impact and helping those coaches make a lot more money, which in turn, our belief is will help get more better coaches in the space as well, right? If you can make more money and you can make this like a great career path, more people are going to be interested in that, and we can kind of get more coaches into the ecosystem. And so all of this is focused initially on sports, but it'll apply way beyond the sports market, right? We're focused right now on expanding actually out into music, hopefully eventually things like dance. We've actually been talking to surgeons and all these other kind of potential applications for a platform like this.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that. You get into the professional, medicine and others where truly those little teeny nuances. So then that leads right into a very obvious question. Some of the best athletes, some of the best surgeons, some of the, what are some of the worst teachers, right?
Yes, so, 100%, right?
So how do you find the people that are great coaches? Because they don't need to be the best in the field at the actual skill. They need to be able to be the best at teaching it.
100%, right?
Them?
Yeah. So ultimately, the great thing about this is you can literally have them do practice coaching sessions that our team can look at, right? All of our video analysis coaching sessions are recorded so that the individual learning on their dashboard can go back and review. You don't have to be like, what did that coach say that low? Or what did my coach say? It's all of them are there. I can go back and watch them and rewatch them anytime. So the first thing we do is have a very sophisticated and in-depth application process for coaches where we don't just look at the certifications they have or the qualifications that they have, because you can't just do that, right? Some of the best coaches in any industry don't have the like certifications like in soccer coaches. Some of the best coaches aren't like, I forget, it's like USA soccer certification level B, C, D, like, because a lot of those are pay to play. So plenty of great, I'm not slamming those down because there's plenty of great coaches that do have those. But if you want to build a platform that's inclusive to all of the great coaches, you have to go beyond certifications, right? Or beyond qualifications. So we have them go through that. We have them tell them about ourselves. We have them record different coaching sessions that our team reviews, right? So when we launch into a new market, we find about 5 to 10 lead coaches. So we can be very exclusive. We can find the best of the best coaches. And then those coaches review any and all coaches in that industry that want to join. And they've got the market expertise. Our platform and our people have the expertise of how do you coach this sort of asynchronous or synchronous online coaching sessions to build engagement and build relationships. And we all come together and we essentially accept deny coaches. And then we also have review systems and feedback systems and making sure that, we're responsive, they're building relationships, they're handling all this. So we really put a lot of emphasis into making this dead simple for coaches to use, supplying them with automation tools to take away a lot of the like things that take a lot of time that aren't really the coaching. So they can focus on what they do best, which is the coaching, and we can kind of do the rest for them. So it's really a team effort, and it's a review-based system, which lets us make sure that we're executing and all of this is saved. All of this is in the cloud, so we can really be sophisticated with that. Hopefully that answers the question overall.
Yeah. So is there, is there like an it factor that, a coach is going to have to help a team succeed, to help an individual succeed?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think it depends on the individual. I think it depends on the situation. My mind goes to a few different areas. Number one, it's the old adage of like, if you can't teach it to a 5-year-old, you probably don't know the material that well, right? I think there's a lot of truth to that.
For sure.
So can a coach break down technical things in a simplistic manner that not only gives the user or the customer or the client the what, but they need to be able to explain why it matters. And I find most importantly, how are we actually going to make the change? And I think where most coaches fall short is they tell you, in tennis, hey, and I find this all the time, and it's one of my pet peeves. Like I suck at serves, and I really want to learn to hit a nice kick serve so I can get a great second serve. And I know I'm supposed to hit the back of the ball, but like I just can't figure out like what am I doing? Like how, right? And I have so many coaches who are like, no, you just need to hit back the ball. I'm like, great.
That doesn't help me.
Yeah, it doesn't help me, right? So the coach that can explain, okay, here are some drills, or here's how we're going to work towards it, or here's how we're going to break this down. And that's not going to be one size fits all, right? If I'm breaking down a technique, like someone's lifting too early into a break zone, I know there's 3 or 4 reasons. I know one of those reasons is normally the why behind it. So I'm going to give them okay, we're doing this because X. Let's try this thing. If it doesn't work, okay, I got some other things that we're going to go through. But I have the how, right? I'm going to give that so you don't have to think for yourself. So I think that's one of the main things. Number 2, it's almost like a stage presence. Like, right, when you're coaching, you have to be engaging. You have to be passionate. You have to give energy across, right? You can have the best coach in the world, but if they're just kind of like monotone, yada, yada, and you see a lot of great coaches go to the media, like a Bill Belichick, right, from the NFL, and like media-wise, he sounds like the most boring guy in the world. I guarantee you he's not like that with his players, right? I guarantee you he's passionate, he's pushing, he's engaging, all that type of stuff. So I think you have to have a persona, especially if it's done in an online format, right? And I'm the first person to say learning in person is the ultimate, right? Like we're not trying to replace in-person coaching. We're just trying to give another avenue for those that can't afford it or can't access it. So that personality becomes even more crucial for a platform like ours. And it's not a TikTok personality. It's just talking with passion, being engaged, and keeping someone sort of there. I think those are the sort of the 2 to 3 major things that I think about that create success. The 4th one is empathy, right? It's very easy to forget how much a beginner doesn't know. And you kind of take a lot of things for granted that you think you kind of seem to be obvious, but isn't. And like, I am still reminded this every day. Like as a race car driver, one of the most fundamental things is this corner an entry speed corner or an exit speed corner? Like, and there's ways to determine this, but it's sort of like, I don't even think about that. Like I just instinctually know that. And this was last year. I was talking to some people and I realized, oh gosh, like they don't even know that concept. Holy crap. Like, it makes you just like, okay, I need to take another layer back, another step back. So having that empathy is really important too.
Those 4 things you mentioned are directly correlated to leadership. They literally, if you can explain it to a 5-year-old, if you have empathy, if you can give the why behind it, not just the what. And I mean, I love how there's so many parallels between athletics and business. And I know people get sick of sports analogies, but it's because they're so parallel, and it makes sense,
I always say performance is performance, right? Like, and internally we have essentially an equation that we think about for performance. And it's really, if you can combine at a high, it kind of breaks down to a few different layers, but at a high level, performance is a mix of physical, mental, and technique, right? And you can argue whether or not physical matters in the business world. I would argue it still matters, maybe a little bit less than the other 2, but I think it's still very important.
Strong body, strong mind, 100%.
Exactly. But at a deeper layer, you then have a formula for improvement, or how do you drive that kind of advancement? And it's really what I call practice reps plus coaching plus focus. And that focus relates back to the coaching, right? You can't be coaching someone on 7 different things at one time. You need to figure out what's the one thing you need to focus on and dive deeper into that. Those 3 things are directly what lead to performance. You can't help but improve if you've got those 3 things over a certain amount of time, right? That it doesn't matter what action you're doing, those 3 things will help anyone improve at anything. Sure, I'm not saying you should be LeBron James tomorrow, but like, you'll if I'm learning business or I'm learning this or public speaking or whatever it might be, that's the formula you use, and it doesn't matter where the performance is, it's going to apply.
Yeah. One thing I wrote down here, and it caught my eye on your LinkedIn page. You are self-described as an infinite learner and challenge seeker. So tell me a little bit more about that. Like, that's literally in your bio. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think I probably should update that now, because I feel like everyone says infinite learner and it's just turned into this like yawn type thing. But I like to consider myself a pretty curious person about a lot of things. And I love learning new things. And, I've sort of turned my back for the most part on the pro sports world and mostly hung it up. And where I'm really love learning right now is the product side of things, the building of a world-class product. It's really fascinating understanding user dynamics and how do you relate that back to economics. And it's a fascinating thing. So I find that I've got a lot of passions and I'm very interested in a lot of things and probably too many things. So I think that's kind of one end of the spectrum on sort of how I think about that ultimately. And it's been very helpful for my career, but I'm also maybe annoyingly ambitious. Like I didn't want to just be a coach. Like I could have easily, and it just comes across like I put that as a negative standpoint. I don't mean that to be a negative standpoint by any means. But like I really wanted to go build something and build a world-class product that helps millions of people. I couldn't just sit there and coach, right?
Yeah.
I needed to do more. There's always the next thing. And in my hobbies, like I don't want to just go and play tennis. No, I want to like, what's the top amateur tournament? What's the top amateur level? Because there's no, obviously I'm not being a pro. And how do I go win that thing? Like that's so I'm my wife's probably annoyed sometimes with I can't just relax. But that's kind of how I think about those two things.
Yeah. I interviewed a guy that played on the championship team with Michael Jordan at Chapel Hill and then going back to coach Chapel Hill a couple decades later. And I asked him, like, why are athletes so good at transferring those skills to business? And, it was a fresh answer to me. He said, because they know how to fail. They're so used to failing being part of the process to get better that it's not a setback. It's like, oh, great. I'm glad I missed that shot because now I can figure out why. I'm glad I overshot that turn. I know next time going into that to brake a little bit earlier or whatever, and it's not a negative, or in business failure's seen as a negative, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah. I mean, look, we failed so much, right? Like I look at, so my wife works for a company called Hinge, and they started actually very similar time to us. They're a public company worth billions of dollars, right? And then I'm like little old Blayze over here. Like, a lot of that has been like, I didn't know anything about business or, so like, and we've had to fail and fail and fail and fail. And like, we started as, oh, let's just start with these Zoom calls. Like you just book time with me and, oh, that sucks. Okay. How do we make this better? Okay. That sucks. Okay, how do we make this better? And we do that over and over and over again, just making sure that you can fail without the whole business failing, right? How do you make small failures, but still keep alive to go learn another day? I do find that the hardest part about this whole thing, and I think where most athletes turned business people struggle and or get frustrated, is the feedback loop. And in racing, there's, hey, every minute and a half, did I go faster? Did I not go faster? And I have a process. I know if I do these 17 different things, I'm gonna perform. And if I didn't perform, let me go look at the data. Oh, I'm doing that one thing wrong. Can't really do that in business, right? There's way more optionality in terms of the variables and how do you know where to focus and what really drives what. And I think that is the hardest thing, at least for me, but I think for most athletes, is you now come into an environment where there are right answers, but there's not really wrong answers. It's this like, which is finding out the best. It's a lot more vague and there's a lot longer feedback loops. I think that's a really hard challenge.
No, that's insightful. That's actually really insightful. So let's fast forward 3-4 years. Your passion is just awesome. Like to hear you talk about your coaching platform. It's so refreshing. Where do you see Blayze coaching 3-4 years from now?
That's a great question. First and foremost, I hope we have thousands of coaches making an impact in millions of lives through this sort of personalized experience. And I think my hope is in 3 or 4 years, no matter really what you want to learn to a point, like we're never going to be a platform that would coach math. We're never going to be a platform that would coach, and I say this now, but I'm surprised at how many applications might be applied. So maybe we're wrong, but we're more of a visual coaching platform. So you could think, in the business world, there's many different trades, maybe even sales you can coach in our format. You think hobby-wise, dance, there's music, there's sports, there's all of this type of stuff, right? So my hope is, for anyone that has a hobby, a trade that wants to improve upon it, you can come to Blayze and you can immediately one-on-one access some of the best coaches in the world in a personalized format. So let's say you're a I work with a customer of mine that's an amateur race car driver. He's an amateur golfer and does some swimming. You'd be able to come through and get all three of his coaches, build a platform, build engagement, build relationship with those three coaches for all three of his activities, and become significantly better, significantly faster than you could otherwise do for a lot less money, and then help tens of thousands of coaches make a real living doing what they're passionate about, and coaching and making impact in lives and making a bigger impact in lives. So I look at sort of versus thinking about the product, I'm like, let's work back from the 30,000 foot view. It's more about if we can help the coaches succeed, do their best work, and get the best coaches, the rest will take care of itself. So I think that's really where we focus today.
Cool. Super cool. Well, then the probably the most important question I can ask you right now then is, how can people find you? How can they get a hold of you? How do they engage with Blayze Coaching?
So we're really simple. It's blayze.io. When we spell it a little bit weird, it's BLAYZE.io. As most founders, I do all of our support stuff and things like that. So if you want to reach me, it's very simple. Any of our email addresses, just make one up at blayze.io, will go to me. Or if you want to do Dion, D-I-O-N at blayze.io with my email address. If you go to our little chat bubble on our website, I'm the one responding to that. So any of those email addresses work really well. But I'm also, I don't tweet a ton, and I'm pretty active still on Twitter through DM, stuff like that. So Twitter, Dion von Moltke, I think it's at DNVMR or something like that. Twitter I'm pretty active on, most of the social media channels, but really email, Twitter, our website, blayze.io. I'm pretty easy to reach overall.
Okay, cool. I would normally wrap it up right there, but wow, I can't, because you just said something that I know the audience is now more curious about, because I am. You said, as a founder, I'm doing the support. I'm the guy in the chat. I'm doing it, right? What if you had to wrap it up? Because there are a lot of people that are listening to this, have already started their business, or looking to level it up. There's a lot of people, though, that are listening that are just waiting to take that step. It's a little scary. And honestly, most people don't realize how freaking hard it actually is, right? Business is hard. It's hard to the third power, but it's rewarding. And you can, the passion on your face, it's rewarding. What's the biggest takeaway that you could share about being a founder, like a ground up from the start founder?
Put the books down and just get to work. I think, it's just, when I started, I knew nothing. I said, hey, I have this idea of maybe I could just teach this race car stuff online, or let me put some videos. So within a day, I remember my wife left up, we were living in Charleston. She went to the office. By the end of the day, I had my Shopify store open and up. I had a few videos up, and I had payment started. And again, I'm not a technical person, right? Shopify made it super easy. This was back in 2018, something like that. So they were a little bit early, and it looked terrible. It was this light blue color, and I just came up with a name and put it out there. But who the hell cares, right? Yeah. And from there, I went from knowing nothing and sort of, I went from that idea to sort of morphing it and then coming back to coaching. And, from someone that has no background in business, I have no college degree. I've, spent 10 years as a professional race car driver. I've moved over to this. I've raised probably over $1 million now. And it's just, none of it's perfect. You go to our website today, and there's still plenty of things wrong that need to be fixed and stuff like that. You just get started.
Wiser words have never been spoken. Put the books down and get busy and get busy. I love it, man. That's how you make it happen.
Yep.
Dion, thank you so much for your time, brother. I really appreciated this. And you are a fun guy to talk to, because you believe in what you're doing, and it shows. It shows.
No, I appreciate your time and have a little fun.
Awesome. Guys, take care. Thanks for joining the ThriveMore podcast. Thank you so much for tuning into the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any resources mentioned during the show. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. I'd also like to remind you to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thank you again for tuning in. And until next time, always remember to set your intentions for the day and strive to thrive.